So tonight we're going to do that Lab 3, Module 5 Lab 3, and there's two parts to it, and I'm going to drag this over here. The first part is we're going to draw, let's see, and we'll go through step by step, but we're going to draw a shape that looks something like this here. We're going to create the dimension style, create some layers, draw it on those layers, and put the dimensions in. And we're going to save that, I think is, we're calling it hip plan, something like that. And then what we're going to do is create another drawing, a separate drawing. We will create some dimension styles in that as well. Create some layers as follows. And if you have two monitors, you may want to pull this up to follow along. And what we'll do is we're going to sketch these boundary lines here. The dotted line, the phantom line, and we're going to what we call XREF in a drawing. That hip plan there in that light blue color is a separate drawing file. We're going to insert it into, this is called the plot plan drawing, and we'll draw the sidewalk there and some other text, and then we'll print that onto a viewport and show you how to do that. So I'm going to go through that entire exercise with you on that. So I'm going to move this off to the screen here, and I'm going to refer to that on my other screen about what we're doing and go from there. So I'm on the PDF called Surveyor Units, what's it called? Surveyor Units 1-1 PDF. And what they want us to do is first go into a new drawing and call it HIP. And what I would suggest you do on this, these two drawings, create a separate folder on your, you don't have to, but this would be easy for you. If you create a folder on your desktop or someplace on your hard drive, maybe call it Module 5, something like that, and then save these two drawings in that. And I'm going to do just that just now. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And I've got a, for this one, I'm calling it Module 5 Zoom. That's my folder, and I'm going to call this HIP. And again, for those of you that came in, I am recording this, and I'll post this video tonight or by early tomorrow morning that you can reference. So the first thing we need to do is set up our drawing units, and I'm going to type in the word units at the command prompt. And when I do this, this unit dialog box comes up, and they want us to change our units to architectural units, and for this one they want the precision to be 0, and it looks like everything else is going to be good, so we'll go ahead and OK out of that. On page 2 they want us to create two layers, dimension and hip plan. So to create layers, let's come over here to our layer property. Maybe I already had it up. Right there it is. And I'm going to drag it out here on the screen. And up here, different ways to create a new layer. There's a button right there that says New Layer. And I'm going to call this Hip Plan. And they want us to give it a color, I'll just keep it white. And another layer called Dimensions. And we're going to give that a color of, they said blue, but on a black screen, I'm going to give it a color, I'll go ahead and keep it blue for now. We may have to change that. So we've got our layers. In fact, I think I am going to change that to, we're going to get hit with that dimension. I'm going to change that to that is active. I've got a command active. We'll change that here in a second. So now we want to create a dimension style called hip. And if we come into our annotate tab, this is one way to do that. And under the dimensions area, there's this little button right there. It's a flyout. If I click on that, that brings up the dimension style manager. You can also type in dim style. That will get you there too. And they want us to create a new dimension style from standard. And standard is selected, so I'm going to select the new button. And this is called hip. And when I do this, we get the dialog box that pops up, and I'm following along again. And if we go to the Symbols Arrow tab, they're telling us to change our arrows to architectural ticks. And I'm looking at it here to see what other changes we need to make. The break size, they say 1/8 of an inch. We'll keep it a quarter, it'll be fine though. Everything else I think looks good. On the next page, they tell us to go to text, and we want the vertical text to be above. And you can see when it does that, the text goes above the dimension line. And we want it aligned with the dimension, and when we do that, the dimensions go in line. And everything else I believe is good. All right, and the next page, I'm looking at it, we go to the Fit tab, and we want to change our scale up to 60. And we talked about that in class last week, how that'll automatically multiply all the values of your textile. In a couple weeks here, I'm going to show you how that dimensions can be updated according to the scale that you select. And that's called annotative scale. And we'll get to that here before the semester's over. I think the last tab we go to is the primary units, and we go to architecture. And I'm looking here to see if we change anything else. And I think we're good there. So I want to make sure that I change my layer to hip plan. And I'm going to dock this layer. Actually, I'm going to change the color too, because that blue is going to be hard to see on black. So let's just make it red. And I'm going to dock my layers to the side here. So I want to change my layer first of all. So I go to the Home tab, and I want to make sure that hip plan is current. And as I look at this, this is what we want to draw. So I'm going to refer to this on my other screen, but I'll call out what I'm doing. And I want to start in the lower left corner, and I'm going to go around clockwise to put the outside of my roof plan in. And then I'll come back in later to get the angled lines. So I'm going to go to my line command, and I'm just going to start any place on my screen. And I want to go up 23 feet. So I'm going to go 23, and I've got to put the foot symbol there to tell it that I want to do feet. And you guys might get something like this. My end of my line is way off the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and end the command by hitting enter. And then I'm going to click on my wheel twice to do a zoom extents. Or I can scroll out as I need to. I just wanted to make sure I can see the end of that line. And I'm going to move it over here a little bit. Now I'm going to go back into the line command. My O snap is set to endpoint. I want to pick up where I left off, and I want to drag it to the right. Right now I've got my, let's turn ortho on just to make sure we've got that. I want to go 49 feet. And I want to come down 25 feet, 25 foot symbol, hit enter. I want to drag to the left, and I'm going to type in 15 feet, 15 feet. I'm going to go drag it up and type in 6 feet and hit enter. Drag it to the left and type 22 feet. Drag it down 4 feet and hit enter. And then I can pick that endpoint, or I can drag it and type in 12 feet, and hopefully everything lines up. I hit enter in the command. So now what I did there, if some of you are confused about that, we need to get together and talk, because that right there is basic. You should be able to do that. If you can't, we need to meet and get that squared away, and let me know. What I want to do now is I want to change my ortho down here, which allows us to draw straight lines. I want to change it to polar. And if I click on this polar button down here on my status bar, I see all the different angles I can get. And in this case, I want to be able to draw 45s. So I'll pick this one right here. It's already selected. And I'm going to click it again to make sure it's blue so it's highlighted. So when I draw these lines, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw some lines, and I'm going to draw them longer than what they need to be, and I'm going to come back in and trim them later. That's my strategy. So I'm going to go ahead and do this right side first. So I go to the line command, and I click. My O snap is set to endpoint, so I can click that endpoint. And as I move my cursor around, you'll notice there'll be a little green dotted line, and it's kind of got a magnetic feel to it. So it's snapping at that angle of 45s. There I'm going to 90. I'm going to another 45. Actually, this is 135 really. So I'm going to go 135. I'm going to drag it up past where it really needs to be and hit enter. To get back in the line command, I can come up here and select line or hit enter again and pick that. And again, I'm going to drag it way past where it needs to be and hit enter. I hit enter again to go in the line command. I'll do the same thing for this point. And I'm going to do the same thing for this point. And again, we're going to figure out here in a second where all these go. So next I'm going to click the line command, and I'm going to select the intersection of that. And if you don't have the intersection snap on, you can do a shift right click and select intersection there. So I click that, and I'm going to drag it up past where it needs to be. Okay, so right now I got a mess here, and I got to trim some of this stuff out. So I'm going to go up to the trim command. In the version of AutoCAD you're doing, once you select trim, you should be able to start picking edges. Mine is an older version, so what I'm going to do is individually select. I'm going to select everything to make it a cutting edge, and then I'm going to come in here so it looks like what your version is doing, and just get rid of some things here. So I want to get rid of this. I want to get rid of that. Let's see, I can get rid of this, and this. And okay. And then I'll go back into the line command and pick up this point here and make sure I snap to 45 and hit enter. And now I can go back into trim again. Let's select these two lines to make them cutting edges. In your version, you're already there, so you don't have to do that, but all you would have to do is come in here and click these lines. So we've got the right side done. And if I go into line command again and pick this point, this is the ridge of the roof. I'm just going to drag it way out here, further than I need to be, knowing that I'm going to have to trim it. Let's do the same thing to the left side here, where I click on this, and I drag past. I'm hitting enter again. Go back into the line command, pick that point, drag it past, hit enter. And if I go into the line command again and pick this point, hit enter. So this intersection there is really what I need this one too. Again, I'm dragging it way past than what I need to. So let's do some trimming here to see where we are here. And I can come up here to my Modify tab and select Trim. I'm going to select a bunch of these things and hit enter. And actually, I made a mistake there. We need to draw this line here straight up. And actually, this one needs to extend, so I made a mistake there. So what we can do is just come up here to the trim button, hit that drop down. I can select trim, that's where or extend, that's where I want to go to, and extend it to that one. And now I can trim this line here, like so. Now I should be able to click on these 2 points here and connect the dot there. Now I can do some trimming. I can also grab grips and move them, but I'll go ahead and do a trim and just get rid of a bunch of these lines here. I'm looking at my other screen to make sure I've got them correct. Okay, I'm checking that out, and I think I've got it there. So that's the hip portion there. So there we just did some direct distance entry, we did some trimming and some extending, and we set our polar so that it was on the 45, 91, 35. We drew some angled lines and to make things a little bit easier for us. So I'm going to go ahead and change my layer now to dimensions. and I'm following along here, and this is what my dimensions are going to be red. They show blue here, but we're going to dimension this now. So let's go up to our, we can go to the Annotate tab. And right here, we've got different kinds of dimensions. We're going to use the linear dimension, and I'm going to pick this endpoint and that endpoint, and just drag it up a little bit and left click. And if I hit enter again, it takes me into that dim linear command. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick this point and that point and just drag it straight up. Hit enter again to go back into that command. Pick these 2 points. If I hit enter again, one other thing you could do if you're dimensioning a line like this, if you notice my command prompt, instead of picking points, if I hit enter to select the object, I can just select this line and drag it down too. Now that's assuming that line is one piece. If you've drawn the line in 2 separate pieces, then all bets are off. You got to pick the points. For the rest of this, I'm going to go ahead and pick the points though. And there's a 6. I hit enter again to go back into it. That's the fastest way for me. And I'm placing the dimension. So we've got them all but the front here. I'm going to go ahead and let me get rid of this one. I'll show you an easier trick here. If I come here to the dim linear and I've put these in first, and I'm picking left to right, if I come up here to do that continuous, we did this last week or the week before in class. If I hit continuous, I can pick up where I left off and just pick the new point and the new point again, and it puts those in there automatically for me. So that's kind of a nice, easy way to do that. I'm going to go ahead and save my good work in case something goes horribly wrong. The next thing we need to do is put in the angle dimensions here. And this one's pretty easy. The 135s and the 225s, there's a little trick we have to do. We'll show you that. Let's do the 45 first. So if I come into my Dimensions tab and hit this drop down where it says Linear, we want to do Angular. So I click on Angular, and I'm just going to select these 2 lines. And then left click, and it puts that in there for me. If I click Angular again, on this one what I've got to do, I want to dimension this line to the horizontal, but I don't have a horizontal line here. So in that case, if you look down on your command prompt, we can select arc, circle, or line, or if we hit enter, we can specify a vertex. So let's hit enter, and let's pick that point as my vertex. It says now pick a point on the first angle point. I don't have any lines, but if I have my ortho on, or actually polar is on right now, but I can pick horizontal with this polar since it's going at 0 angle. I'm going to left click there, and then the next endpoint is this point right there, that intersection, and there's that 135, and I can, if I move my mouse, you can see that it'll move where I want to go. I'm trying to make it look kind of like what the drawing is. We'll pick there. If I hit Angular again, and I want to do the vertex trick, so I hit enter and pick that point. I want to pick a horizontal point out here someplace, and then I want to pick this point there, which allows me to do a 225. So as I'm looking at this, I think we're pretty close to what they've got there. These notes here, dimension layer, that's just notes. We don't need to worry about that. It's just telling us what layer to go on. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. So we're pretty much done with the first part of the assignment. Does anyone have any questions right now of what we just did there with the hip drawing? All right. So let's bring our drawing back over here. I didn't create this assignment, and as I'm looking at it, it's kind of confusing. Number one, this MP4 file no longer exists. YouTube blocked it. But basically what we're going to do is create another drawing called plot plan. And we're going to create some, we're going to change our units. We're going to create a new dimension style. And it gives us some information here. And what we're going to draw this boundary line for a property line. And this one's got something called surveyor units, which is something we haven't talked about before, but we'll show you how to do that. They also show this another PDF file, which is kind of a little redundant, actually. I'm looking at it here. We'll use both of them. This one tells us what layers to do. Um, so let's go ahead and create a new drawing. We'll call it plot plan. And these are the layers we're going to create, and then we'll change the units. So I've got a drawing over here. Right now it's called drawing 3. I'm going to click File, Save As. Actually, I'll do it from this one. This might be a better way to do it. Save As. And I'm in my Module 5, and I called it Zoom folder. That's where I'm going to keep both of these files. There's our HIP plan right there, our HIP drawing file. This is called Plot Plan. And let's save that. So now this is saved. And the first thing they want us to do is fix up our units. So I typed in units before, but I think we can. Is it drafting settings? Oh, there's units. Under the Format tab, you can select units there as well, or type units in. We want to change it to architectural. 16th is good. They want us to change our angle to surveyor units. And this is where there's the north. They give you a north, a directional lettering to define the angle. And right now, if you go directly north, that's 0, 0. With the other angles that we've been doing, decimal degrees, 0 is on the right side. If you looked at the face of a clock, it'd be at 3 o'clock. And when we do surveyor units, 0 is at 12 o'clock. So we've got the units set. Let's say OK. And I'm looking at my PDF file on my other screen here. We need to create some layers. So let's go to the Home tab. And let's actually, our layer properties should be docked over here on the right. If it's not, you can click Layer Properties to get that palette. I'm going to drag this out here and click on New. And we want to create one called Plot Plan. That's one layer. We'll worry about colors in a second. I hit Enter. We want to create one called Drive. This is going to be for the driveway that we're going to draw here in a second. We've got another one called Text. Not Test, Text. And another layer called Plot Plan Dimensions. And one called Drive Dimensions. And let's see, the plot plan, they want it black and white. That's good. The drive, let's make it, they say magenta, which is that color there. The text, we want to do red. Say OK. The plot plan, they want black and white. I'm going to give it kind of a pink color to let me know that it's different than the other one. And the drive dimensions, they want green. So the plot plan, drive dimensions, okay. And let's go ahead and say, just we'll dock that. I'll right click on this and say anchor to the left. And I want to make sure that my plot plan is current. I'm looking at my directions here. So now they want us to, okay, I'm looking at this file. I'm going to go back to the other PDF that says you can use dynamic, I think is what it's called, something like that. This is going to be a very important piece of information that we'll use here in just a second. That's what we're going to draw. But if I go back to plot plan directions, someplace there, does it tell us? Let's see here. Did I skip it? Ah, it's that first one. That first document called surveyor units, if we okay, here we go. Under the surveyor units -1 file at page 9, it tells us to change our units, which we've done, and then it tells us to create a plot style called plot plan. So that's what we're going to do with the dimension style, and I'm going to refer to that on my other screen here to tell us how to change that dimension style. So if I go to the Annotate tab and under Dimensions, hit that arrow right there, that brings up the dimension style. And again, we did this in the hip drawing. Now we're in another drawing. That's why we don't always see a standard here. I click on New, and we want to call this Plot Plan. And I'm looking at my screen, and the first thing we need to do is go to Fit, and they want to change our scale to 240. And that's the only thing in that tab. So under the Text tab, we want to make sure that we're centered, and align the dimension line with the object. I think everything else looks good. I'm on page 13 now, that document. And we want to go to our Symbols and Library. And we need to do something here. I'm looking at my screen here. It doesn't close field, close field. I think we're good there. And then we come to the line. This is where we do some things here. So they want us to suppress these dimension lines. And notice what happens in this screen. When I click on Suppress Dimension Line 1, it takes the dimension line. Dimension line is the ones that's between the extension lines. If I take the dim line 2 off, now there's nothing in between those extension lines. So they also want us to suppress our extension lines, 1 and 2. So now we don't have any lines, we just have the text. So when we dimension this, it's just going to show the text. There's not going to be kind of arrows, leaders, or any kind of extension lines for us. And the last thing they want us to do is change our units. And our units are going to be architectural. They have precision 132. I better change that because that comes into play. And the units will be degrees, minutes, and seconds. That's the surveyor's units. That's the way they break those down. Instead of doing decimals, they call it degrees, minutes, and seconds. And everything else I think looks good there. Let's see if we're done. Okay, so I think we're good. So I'm going to drag this back onto our screen here to show us what we're going for here. So this is a piece of ground here, and they're laying this out. And these phantom lines here are the property boundaries where the building is going to be. And they've got some space here. I guess this is the street out here, it looks like. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to draw this outside border first, and then we'll offset to get this inside and change them to phantom. Now, when you see these numbers here, it says east 150 feet 2 inches. And what that means in surveyor units, I'm going to pick this point and I'm going to go east. And east in this case is by going to 3 o'clock. So if you're in the middle of your clock, we're going to go to the right 150 feet 2 inches. From here it says north 175 feet 3. And since it just has one directional letter, we're going to go straight up. Now from here, we're going to use this line right here. It's a polar. We're going to go at a distance of 177 foot 4. The north, we're going to go 88 degrees, north, 88 degrees, 30 minutes, and 16 seconds west. And we'll be able to type that in. And then here we can play connect the dot to get this south, 8 degrees, 34 minutes, and 10 seconds easterly at a distance. So in the surveyor units, they give you the directional information first, and whether it's north, south, northwest, northeast, or so on, and then the distance second. That's what's going on there. So for me, I'm going to start right here at this point, and I'm not going to worry about any of this surveyor unit nomenclature until I get to this one here, and then I'm going to basically cut and paste what I see right there to the command prompt. So let's go ahead and attack this. So I'm going to go into the line command and draw that first line. I'll pick a point, and I've got my, I'll turn ortho on just so it's not confusing. And I want to go 150 feet 2. So when we go 2, it's showing us a dashed line there, But between the feet and the inches, we don't put the dash. We just do 150, the foot symbol, the inches, and then hit enter. And again, it went off the screen for me. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of the command, hit enter, double click my wheel, or scroll out however you want to do that. And I'm going to move this guy off here a little bit so it's out of the way, that UCS icon. I'm going to pick up my line command again, and I'm going to start here at this point. Here we've got 175 feet 3 inches north, so it's going to be straight up. So I'm going to drag it straight up and type in 175 feet 3, no dash symbol here, and hit enter. So now from this point, this is where this is the only tricky part of this. If I bring this back over here, you'll see that this is what we need to type in right there. So I could actually highlight that right there, and I should be able to copy it, or you can type it in exactly like that. And if I come back over here, let's see if I go, I'll turn my ortho off. Can I just paste it in there? No, I'll go back in the line command. So I'm going to go at, can I paste this? Actually, I'm just going to type it in. So it's at 177 feet, the foot symbol, 4, no dash. And then I'm going to hit my my less than sign and type in for north, 88, D for degrees, 30, and the foot symbol for minutes, and 16, and the inch symbol for seconds. And then I'm going to type in W for west and hit enter. So I just typed in what was on your sheet there exactly as it was. Actually, they made it, yeah, I typed in exactly as it was, and that should work for you, except you don't need this dash right there. That might confuse you there. So you can take that dash out. That might be a little tricky there. At this point here, I'm going to just go ahead and click my endpoint and not worry about that last part. So now we have that boundary. And if we come over here and look and see what we got, it tells us that there is a 10-foot side yard, a 10-foot setback, and a 10-foot side yard there, and a 30-foot building line. So basically, we're going to offset this line 30 feet and the other 3 lines 10 feet, and then do some trimming. So we go to the offset command and type in 30 feet, and I want to select this line. I hit enter again and type in 10 feet. Select this line and this direction and left click, this line, this direction and left click, this line, that direction, left click. In the offset command, it stays in the offset command, assuming you want to keep offsetting at that same distance. If you want to change the distance, you hit enter and get back into it. If I go into my trim command, I'll select these 4 lines. With your version of AutoCAD, you don't have to select these lines first. You can go right in to selecting the pieces you want to get rid of. Now, they don't really say this in the exercise, but these are phantom lines here. We need to change those to phantom lines. If I click on this line here and go to Properties palette, I can see my line type is by layer, and all I have is continuous or by block. So the way to load a line type, if you don't have it, is to type out the word line type, one word, line type, and hit enter. And it brings up this line type manager box here. And if you just click on the load button, it'll take you to another dialog box. If you scroll down, you'll find Phantom. So let's load Phantom up and hit enter. So now we can select these 4 lines. So what happens with AutoCAD, it doesn't have all the available line types that you would need. It doesn't bog the drawing down with extra space. You load them as you need to. So that's how that's working. Now that I've got those selected, if I go back to my properties palette and if I change my line type to phantom, if I scroll in, I can tell that it's phantom, but we're working with such a large object, a large piece of ground, we don't see them. So there's a trick, a system variable that we can change that will make those look phantom for us. And if you type in one word, LT scale, and I know this because they had us do the dimension style. They used a 240 for our dimension style scale a few minutes ago. So I'm going to use about half of that. That's kind of a rule of thumb. And once I do that, they appear. And you can play with different numbers if you want to, but that looks good for me. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is put in some dimensions there. So let's put some dimensions in. And we've got these 4 here, and then we'll put in some text. And I'm going to change to my dimension layer, which is called plot plan dimensions. They'll be pretty pink. And let's go to my annotate tab. And for these, I want to use a dimension called aligned, because we want the distance. We don't want to have we don't want to dimension the x and y value, which is what linear will give us. We want the true length of that line. So I'm going to do aligned, and it won't make a difference for these first two lines, but it will for the ones on the left and on top. And on this one, I'm going to go ahead and hit enter to select objects. This way I don't have to pick the endpoints. I just pick this guy here. I'm going to drag it down. And you'll notice that this doesn't have any dimension lines or extension lines. That's because when we created this dimension style, we suppressed those. If I hit enter again, it takes us into aligned, and I hit enter to allow me to select the object. I don't have to, you can pick the 2 points if you want to. I hit enter again to go back into the command, enter one more time to allow me to select that line, and I pick it there. You notice when I move it here, it's grabbing that endpoint, so you got to be careful that I move it up high enough so that it doesn't find the endpoint of that line. If I hit enter again, enter one more time, I can select this line. So you'll notice that that it's got some extra verbiage in there for us. And when we put those dimensions on there, it doesn't bring them in automatically. So this is what we got to do to fix those. So here we need to put an E in front. We need an N in front of this. We need an N and some nonsense here with a W, and here south 83 something and east in front. So that's what I'm going to do next, show you how to do that. So what we'll do, we need to put an N in front of this one. So I'm going to double click on that dimension. And when it does that, it highlights for us, and the cursor is at the front. And I'm going to make sure I hit my left tab key, make sure I'm at home if I'm not already at the home of that, and just type in, turn my caps on, I'll type in E and a space. And then up here, I'm going to hit the close text editor. So it puts that E in front. So we can add additional text to our dimension if we want to. Now, if I change the length of this, the dimension would change, but the east would still stay there. And I'm going to do the same thing with 175. I'm going to hit the home key to make sure I'm at the front, so my cursor is blinking at the front. I type in N and space. If I don't hit that home key, it may overwrite my dimension, and I don't want that. And I don't want to type over it, because if I type over the dimension, it won't be a dimension anymore. It will be a dimension, but it won't update if that line is moved. So if I click on this guy here, zoom in again, and I hit my home key to go to the front. Here I'm going to do N space. It looks like 88. Now we need that little degree symbol, and I don't see it on my keyboard, but what we can do is where my cursor is blinking, if I do a right click, and there's a option here to do symbols, and here's some special symbols, and one of those is degrees. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and do a 30, and then the foot symbol for minutes, 16, and the inch symbol for seconds, a space, a W space, and then hit my close text editor. So I think we're good there. Let's go ahead and fix this last one here. Hit my home key, and we've got a S for south, 8 degrees, and I got to right click there again and select symbol to get my degree, and 34 feet or minutes. I'm looking at my other screen, 10, second space E space, and that looks good there. So we've got the boundary, we got the line, the phantom line we put in. We did some dimensioning, and I used the align dimension up here. And then we added some text to our dimension. Maybe right now, I'm gonna grab a drink of water and see, does anyone have any questions while we're going on here? All right. If I look at this here, we got to put some text in, and we got to make sure we get the height. Since we're dealing with such a large space, we just can't put 1/8 inch height text. It'll be so small, it'll look like a blade of grass, size of a blade of grass relative. But they give us some hints here. Let's see, in one of these documents, right here, they tell us that they want this height of this text to be 2 inches. Looks like there's some 3-inch text there and 5-inch text over here. So I'm going to hold on to that on my other screen here. And let's see, do we have a layer? What layer do we put that on? Let's go back into our layer box. Let's go to the Home tab. There's some text there. It looks like we'll keep on the dimensions for this. It looks like they haven't changed the layer. So let's go to our text, and under the the Home tab, we can do it here. I'm going to hit the drop down. I'm going to do single line text, and I'm going to pick J for justify, or I can left click on justify down here, and then I can on my command prompt, and I can left click on middle, and that's what I'm going to be using for all these. I'm just going to pick a point someplace close. The height of my text, they told us they wanted us to do 2 feet or 24 inches, so I'm going to do 2 and the foot symbol, and my rotation is going to be 0, and this first text is 30-foot building line, and I hit enter twice. That clears it. And this next one here, I'm going to do, let's see, go back into text, and I'm going to do select justify, select middle, and I'm just going to pick the midpoint of that line. I'll use my O snap, and it says the height is 2. It remembers that, so I'm going to hit enter to accept that. My angle, since I started my point right here in the middle, I'm going to go ahead and pick the end point of this to get the right angle for me. And actually, I messed up there. Let me do this again. So I click on text, I left click on justify, I left click on middle, and I do a shift right click to pick the midpoint. And the height is 2 feet. And the rotation angle is, I'm going to pick that point and type the text, which is going to be 10-foot side yard, and hit enter twice. So it puts, since I picked the O snap in the middle, it put it right on top of the line. I just have to move that. The reason why I picked the middle of that line, I wanted to select the endpoint here to give it a nice rotation angle for me. So let's go up to text again, select justify, left click on it, left click on middle, and shift right click to pick the midpoint of my line. And the height is 2 feet, and my angle, I think, is going to be this one. And the text here is 10-foot setback. And again, I got to move it out of the way. One more piece of text here. We do the same song and dance justify, left click on middle, shift right click. And I'm just doing this so it's exact. You guys could eyeball this if you wanted to, but what this does for me, and 2 feet is the height, by picking that midpoint, I can pick this endpoint here to get the exact rotation. And this is going to be 10-foot side yard. So my text is rotated a little bit differently than what you see in the assignment. This is the way it should be though, so it's readable. So this is what we've got here so far. We've got our dimensions and our text. We could go ahead and put in this plot plan here. Let's go ahead and do that part next with the text, the red text, the text in red. And I'm going to park this on the right side here and scroll down here so I can see it. So we're going to go into the text layer. It looks like they want us to do that. So let's do that. I'm going to scroll down here and go into our text. Click on justify again. I'm going to do middle. And this one I'm just going to eyeball kind of below this. It looks like that's where it is. And the height of this for East Dusty Road, they want it to be 3 feet. So 3 feet is my height. And my rotation, if I turn my ortho on and just pick off straight off to the side here, it gives me the current angle. And I'll call it East Dusty Road. Enter twice. And let's do the same thing over here. I'll go back in the line command by hitting enter. Click justify, click middle. Actually, let's escape out. Listen here, it looks like it's left justified. So go back into text. Let's justify, let's make it left. I'll pick a point out here someplace. And the height of this is still 3 feet. And my rotation, I'm going to drag to the right just to specify that. And the text is going to be, it says lot number 3, block C. I hit enter. Let's put the second line in. Black land subdivision. Hit enter again, and that's Collin County. Collin, Texas. So I'm going to do a little trick here where I can put some more text in, but you can also copy this text up here. Let's do a copy. Go to the copy command, and I can move this up here. And then if I go to my properties, let's see. I don't have anything selected here. Let's click on this text first. And my properties is going to be the height. This is supposed to be 5, so let's do it 5 feet. And the text is going to be plot plan. So this is single line text. So what we need to do, if we do to get that underlined, there's a trick in text, single line text. If you do a %% U, that'll make all your text underline to the end. Now, if you wanted to stop that, you would click here and do a %% U, so only plot would be underlined. But they want, whoops, and of course I didn't accept that. Go to the home key and %% U. There we go. I hit enter twice. So that's what we've got so far, and let's go ahead and save this so I don't mess up. This is a good place to ask for questions. Anything you guys have some questions about? All right. We're going to add this north symbol, show you how to do that, and then we're going to xref the house in, and then print, and then we're done. So they have us go to what's called the Design Center, and I think you can type in Design Center. And you'll get something that looks like this. And they have you, they show you where to go, what buttons to click to get to this point, and you should come up, it'll be something like AutoCAD. I'm in 2020, you'll be in 22 or 21. And then from there, you'll scroll down to Sample, ENU, EN-US, Design Center, and then under Design Center, they've got some drawings. And one is called Landscaping. If you pop that open, there'll be blocks. If you click on the block, there'll be a north arrow there. So if I click on this north arrow, and what it does is it goes to insert it here. Let me say an OK. And I can put this over here someplace. It looks kind of small. So what we can do, let's scale that up a little bit, show you how to do that. And we can use, I'm not sure if we've ever talked about this, but there's a command called Scale under Modify. And if I click on that, it wants us to select the object. So we select the object just like we have done always. I'm just going to put a crossing window around it, hit Enter. It wants us to pick the base point. I'll just pick someplace close to the middle. Now at this point here, I can drag it. If I knew what the exact scale factor was, I could type it in. But here I'm just going to kind of eyeball it, make it look about the same size relative to the drawing, and left click there. So we've got the north arrow in. So if we come back over here, let's see what else we need to do text-wise before we actually do the XREF. I think it's this sheet here. They talk about, and you can see that some of these dates are outdated here, but they say you also need, under column Texas, they want you to type in your first name and last name and today's date. So this is done in 2018 maybe. So you would have underneath Collin County, Texas, put your name and the date, whatever the current date is. And I'll leave you to do that. But the next step is to do an XREF. And again, what we're going to do, here's that hip drawing. I'm going to save this. A few moments ago, we did this hip drawing. And what we're going to do is we're going to XREF it in to this drawing here. And they do that a lot. When you XREF something in, and if I were to go back in and change the hip drawing, it would automatically update into this drawing that I've inserted in. And the other thing that it does, it doesn't bring in a lot of the extra space. It's only referencing the drawing. And this is more kind of intermediate AutoCAD stuff we're doing here, but XREFs are used all the time in AutoCAD. And here's how we can do that. So let me pull back this drawing here and look and see what we've got here, just so we can figure out what we're going to do. So I'm going to bring this XREF in, and I'm going to have to turn off the dimension layers, and we'll show you how to do that. But we've got a place that looks like 66 feet 3 7/16 inches from this outside boundary line, and it's going to rest right on the 30-foot building line here. So I think what I'm going to do is bring it in, insert it in, move it to this point, and then move it over. So we'll do it in a three-step process. We could do it maybe with fewer steps, but we'll do it slow. So to XREF something in, let's see, do I do it? I know how to type it in. I'm just going to type, if you type in XREF, XREF, and hit enter, you'll get this palette that looks something like this. And at the top here, if we hit this drop down, what we're able to do is we can attach another drawing file. If you had an image, a PDF file, there's all kinds of things you can bring into an AutoCAD drawing file. But we want to bring in another drawing file. So let's click Attach Drawing. And I'm in Module 5. I want to be in the Zoom window, the one I was in. And this is the one we just did a few minutes ago. So I'm going to click on that, and there it is. I say Open. And we want to do relative path, and it's good to save these drawings for this example in the same folder. Make sure you do that. I say an OK, and for me, I'm just going to put it right here someplace. And what I'm going to do is go into the Move command and pick that point right there and move it to that corner, exactly on it. And here it tells me that from this outer edge, it's 66 foot 3 7/16, but actually I'm on the inside 10 feet, so really I only need to move it to the left 56 foot 3 7/16 inch. So let's do that. And I think what I'm going to do is turn off these layers, and let me show you what these layers look like. So if we go to our layer palette, when you have an XREF, you see that there are the two layers there. It's prefaced by the drawing name, HIP, and that little pipe symbol dimensions, and HIP pipe symbol plan, and they're kind of grayed out a little bit, and that lets us know that it's an XREF. And for the dimensions, if I select that, I want to freeze that. I don't want to see those dimensions in that. So once I do that, that cleans it up a little bit. So now I go to the move command, and we say we want to go to the left 56. And again, the reason why we're doing 56, we're starting from the phantom line, not the outside line. I drag it to the left, and we go 56 foot 3. Now this is where we use the dash. It doesn't show the dash on the actual dimension, but you put the dash after the inch, and then the 7/16, and it moves it into place there for us. So that is on, let's see what layers that should be on. We don't want it on text, so I should have been on plot plan, drive dimension. Let's make that plot plan instead of text. So I want to draw the driveway right now. So let's switch over to the driveway layer, and I'm just going to go to my line command, grab this corner of that XREF, and I go over to the left 30 feet. And then I'm just going to, it doesn't tell us how far to go down. I'm just going to drag it past that horizontal line, and I'm going to offset it 12 feet. So I go to the offset command, 12 feet, and hit enter. And then I'm going to offset this line here, this horizontal line, 17 feet. So go to the offset command, our distance is 17 feet. And then we need to put a radius here, and we can do that with the fillet. And the fillet command is up here in the modify panel. And we need to tell it what the radius is. So we type in R for radius, and then go, I think the radius is 10 feet. And I select these two lines. And there's our driveway. So do they have us do those dimensions, drive dimensions? They do. The problem we're going to run into, we need to, they don't tell us this, but we need to get a new dimension style. So let's go ahead and do that, because the dimension style we've got here doesn't have extension lines or dimension lines, so we need that. So let's go up to dimension style. I'll show you how to do that really quickly. We go to the annotate tab and hit that button right here, this little arrow by dimensions. And plot plan is what we've got. We're in the plot plan drawing. So I want to do a new, and it's going to create a copy of that, and we want to call it, let's call it plot plan dimensions. We've already got a plot plan. Call it plot plan 2, just so it distinguishes itself. And really all we need to do here is if we go to the line work, we just need to take that suppression off of our extension lines and the dimension lines. So we have those back. So let's do an OK there. OK there. So now we should be able to come into, we don't want to do a line, we want to do linear. And if I select this point here, and I need to pick a point here, I'm grabbing the endpoint there, which you can do if you want to, but I can also do a shift right click and just go near to make sure I'm on that line someplace. It doesn't have to be way down here. You could do that, but I'll just pick right there. And then I put that dimension in there. So there we've got that dimension. If I hit enter again, that takes us back in the dimension. And I want to pick these 2 points here, which are good points here for us. And if I pick this point, it makes them line up perfectly. I go back into the dimension and pick these 2 points. And I put 17 out there. I'm going to go ahead and grab that 17 and grab that grip and see if I can override that and move it in the middle there. Which I can. It sticks it out a little bit, but that's okay. Same thing will happen here when we do, I'm going to pick these 2 points here. There's a 12 feet, and then we need to do the radius for this driveway. So I come up here to the dimensions linear tab, and there's a radius. We just select that guy there. And someone had the audacity to walk in front of my house with a dog in the window. Sorry about that. But there's our radius right there. So I'm looking at this. Let's go ahead and save this. And we're coming up here close to the end. So this is what we've got. I think we've got everything included here. So we've got two drawings. This hip plan is actually part of another drawing, that hip drawing we just did earlier. So we XREF'd it in to the plot plan drawing. We made a couple dimension styles and dimensioned it and drew the driveway in here for us on different layers. And then we also turn the dimension layers off of this plot plan, so we didn't see those, so that didn't clutter things up. So we save that. Let's go see what we need to do to plot this and turn this in and turn you guys loose here. I'll make sure I get this right. I think they give us one of these here. All right, so we're going to create, and they don't really explain it that well, but I'll show you what we need to do is we're going to create, I think we did this a while back where we we went to the layout wizard and created a new layout at a certain scale and a certain paper size. So that's what we're going to do next. And we're going to make the scale 1/64 inches equals a foot. We're going to do someplace here it tells us to do a size portrait. So that's what we're going to do. And here's what we can do. Right now we got layout 1, layout 2. We want to create our own. So if I come up here to tools and go to wizards, we want to go to create layout wizard. And we're going to call this, let's call it plot plan. You can call it what you want. And of course my caps are on. And I do a next. And the printer I want to pick, I want to do a PDF of this. So AutoCAD comes with its own PDF printer, and it's a PC3 file they call it, and it's called DWG to PDF. So I select that and select next. My paper size is going to be the ANSI A. If we hit that drop down, you can kind of see all the different paper sizes for this particular printer. I'm going to do next. We want to do portrait, they tell us, and hit next. We are not inserting a title block into this. We will for our final project, but not this. So let's select none and select next. And then for the viewport scale, we want to do a single for the viewport setup for the scale. If we hit that drop down, it's 1/64 to a foot, and say next. It says pick location. We could pick a location. I'm just going to hit next, and it'll do the default for us. Wait for it. There we go. So really, we should have probably had a viewport layer for this, but that's all right. So if I come in here, I can pan. You don't want to scroll, because if you scroll, it's going to mess up the scale here. So I can hit the lock. If I hit this lock down here, if I scroll, it won't mess up my scaling there for me. So at this point here, we can save the drawing. So for this example, what we need you to do is I need you to upload both drawings for it to work, so I can make sure that you've extracted everything in correctly. And then you need to come in here and print this PDF. And to print that, we just come up here to the print button, and it's already set to DWG PC3. I can do a preview. That's what it looks like, and then I can exit there if I want to, or I could have plotted from that screen too. But if I come back here, I just say an OK, and it's going to tell me to give it a location. I'll put it where my other drawing files are just to make it easy. There's where I put it, I think, and we'll call it whatever that is, plot plan. And it popped up my other screen here, and that's what it looks like there. So that's what I need. I need those 3 files. I need the 2 DWG files and the PDF file here. And that's pretty much it. I wanted to go over this because there wasn't really a good video, and there were a lot of holes, I think, in the assignment. But this is pretty much it. The XREF thing is kind of new for us. We may be doing some more of this later on in the year. And if you have some questions on that, we can answer those too individually. That's all I had tonight that I was going to show you. I think what I'd like to do now is open it up to you guys to see if you've got any questions. And before we do that, though, I'm going to send out an email here later. I think we are going to meet in class next Wednesday. I'm going to have a class for people that want to show up, and we'll talk about more of the same here and some other things going forward. But let me go ahead and ask if there are any questions that anyone has there that I can answer. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video.